All right, man. We made it. Made it through Christmas, and now we got the new year on the horizon.
Another full year podcasting. We made it. It's the end of the year. Today is December 31st. You're off today, but we're not. It's December 31st. Like I said, it's New Year's Eve. The year, not for much longer. It's 2024. Welcome aboard, everybody. You're listening to the Crushing Iron Podcast, and this is episode 823.
Yeah, it is. I've heard actually on some calendars, New Year's until February, but that's another day discussion.
Don't stress. It's either going to do one of two things. It's either going to stress people out.
You got another month.
Exactly. It's either stressing people out too much, or they're going to be like, oh, I can go back out and, do a line of Skittles and then throw down about, 6 gallons of eggnog, and I got a whole nother month to get my life together.
Yeah. Take your time. Or you could start today, which is the day before.
Yeah. It is. Get a little head start. And I would heavily encourage everyone to train today, do something, and then tomorrow, schedule yourself a workout, 5-minute run, and skip it. Because you know what? Now your year, imperfect.
Oh, now you don't have to keep it all up.
Yep. Now there's no streak to keep. There's nothing. The year, imperfect. It's like, walking into your brand new house. You just got it done. You got to build the whole thing, design the whole thing, and then all of a sudden you just, you put a little scratch on it, and now all of a sudden it's imperfect, and you can live a little more free. Like imagine walking the same way. You got Maddie walked in a brand new house. You're like, don't touch that. It's new. It's new. Once you get a few scratches on it, you're like, fuck it, whatever, just roll. And I think that's like, people have these really like gigantic goals, oftentimes, way too enormous. But yeah, just schedule yourself a little 5-minute run and skip it, or schedule yourself 2. Like I'm gonna schedule myself a 5-minute run for tomorrow, and then another 10-minute run, and then I'm going to do the 10-minute run. I'm going to skip the 5-minute, and I've got my workout in, but I'm already non-compliant. And New Year's Day couldn't start at a worse day for people who like to start on Mondays. It's on Wednesday. What are you going to do? What are you going to do with your life? Did you start on Monday? You're going to start next Monday? You're stuck in no man's land. I mean, a lot of people right now, they're straddling the fence. Crotch is getting a little bit sore. It's like mile 105 of the Ironman bike leg. You just don't know what to do with yourself, but get out, do something, but skip something, and now you can be imperfect like the rest of us for the rest of 2025.
Yeah, that's good. All right, 5-minute run. I would schedule 2 hours, and then you could feel really guilty.
Look at the restraint. Look at the patience. Look at the resolve. Yeah, I had a 2-hour run today. You know what? Skipped it. Skipped it. Yeah, totally bad. Look, I'm looking at the big picture here.
You know why? Because nobody's going to control me anymore.
Exactly. No one can tell me what to do. I am a man on my own mission, and I will do whatever I want. But no, we hope everyone had a great Christmas, and everyone has a nice, happy New Year's Eve tonight. I'm sure you've got big plans tonight, as do I. Gonna be a banger. But yeah, hope you had a great year. As we're looking into 2025, we talked a little bit before we went live today. I had an athlete send me a podcast, and I mean, let me be honest. I mean, like I get a lot of podcasts sent to me, and half of them I don't even listen to because I'm like, I don't have the time to listen to it. But I don't even listen to ours. Like I do ours, and that's pretty much the only podcast that matters. I mean, I pick and choose, and I was like, you know what? The title. It was funny because like. I was something I was already thinking about, and the title just kind of bitch slapped me right in the face. And I was like, I got to listen to this. Started listening to it, and every single topic resonated with me on a very, very high level. And one of the many things that, and then he talks a lot about life and priorities. One thing he said, and it's so much of it, and he's the guy, the co-host, or the host, Greg McEwen, like he said he was training for an Ironman. So he was weaving all this out, like with training in life and the professions and priorities and saying no to things. But he said quite a few things that resonated. But one of the biggest ones that I was like thinking about as a coach, right? Because we get all kinds of questions, especially this time of year. And we all get distracted, with things and new things. And he said, from an information standpoint, we went, and this is also, I think this is this is totally the same apples to apples comparison with training, because you have the access to all the same things as every other industry does, right? We've never seen more quote unquote of, things, and more evolution in the sport in the last 2 years, right? Carbon plated shoes, lactate testing, they totally changed like the front ends on bikes and wheels, and everything's disc brakes now. And, we went from, 120 PSI to now people rolling like 65, we went from, moderate 40 to 60 carbs an hour. Now people are trying to shovel in like 200, like we are, there's 19 different devices you can wear. It's never been more to get distracted about. And the phrase he used that I loved was, we went through the information age. We now, and then we just went through, and we still are, the disinformation phase, right? There's so much information out there. It's hard to decipher what is real and what is not. And now, he said, we are in the disorientation phase, where we don't even know what is right, what is wrong, what is true, what is false, what to focus on, what not to focus on. And the level of distraction that we have has never been higher. And I was like, that is like, there's like a million ways you could have that resonate with you as a human, but as an athlete and as a coach, and as, a coach that you're the same way. Like, you work with so many different athletes that have so many different types of, things. Like you can open up your phone, spend 3 minutes, and you can, because your phones know everything that basically you're thinking, you're saying, you're searching. You got 18 different ads for supplements, 20 different ads for races, and 14 ads or mentions for like some new tech product, or this new training plan, or this new device, or this new platform. And you're like, I wasn't confused, and now I'm confused. And one of the most interesting pieces he said was, when someone asks you a question or poses a thought, it immediately interrupts your train of thought, no matter what. So if you're sitting there and you're thinking, about your day or what you're going to do tomorrow, or, the big party you're probably going to throw at your house tonight with like 60 neighbors, and I just said, what's your favorite color? I just hijacked your thought. Totally hijacked it. There's no way around it. You'd have your total thought hijacked, because you were thinking something. I said, what's your favorite color? Now you were on this subconscious or conscious stream of thinking. You were present, you were in the moment. And I just interrupted it with there's no way for you to defend that. And you're like, oh, my favorite color now. That's how easy it is to get distracted. It's like every time we pick up our phone, every time I read, listen to a podcast, right? Or listen to music, or see a news article. Like, we are constantly hijacking our train of thought. And you get to a point to where we're so disoriented from like where we want to go, or even do we even know where we're going, because we're not leading ourselves. We're not on our own journey. We're just being yanked left and right, back and forth, east and west, north and south, from exterior, marketing, exterior propaganda, exterior, motivations from other people and other things. And so I was listening to it, and I took a lot of notes, like personally and professionally. But I also, like, it just resonated with me on a training level about, like, right now the hardest thing for coaches to like preach their athletes is staying the course, and not to get distracted, and not to change, not to reinvent the wheel, not to be, not to adopt everything that comes in, but just stay the course and say no to more things than you can say. I mean, it was really, maybe we'll link to it in the show notes, or I'll send Obi-Clean. It was a billion things and we could talk about today, but I thought, like, the disorientation, like, that to me is the phase that a lot of athletes are in right now, is this just yo-yoing back and forth. What do I do? And that's why I also think, like, it's never been more important to have a trusted, guided, accountable outline or structure for your year from someone you trust that has an objectivity, whether it's a training plan, whether it's a platform that provides it, whether it's, having a coach. Because, like, 6-7 years ago, I mean, when I first got in the sport, 2002 or 2003, like, I went to Endurance Nation and I paid $89 and I printed off a 20-page, 20-week training plan for Ironman Florida off their website. And I had to go, like, that was it. I used a stopwatch and a heart rate monitor, and a stopwatch, like a chrono and a heart rate monitor, and that was it. That was all I had. There wasn't, and the newest, greatest intel I got was waiting every month for my triathlete magazine to come. I was like, "Ooh, I can read about what's going on in here." There were no podcasts, there was no Strava, there was no Swift, there was no nothing. And I remember like reflecting on that yesterday. I was like, how easy it was to also feel very confident in what I was doing, even though like there's a bunch of different ways to train and all these kind of things. Like I only knew what I knew, and so I didn't feel inferior. I didn't feel uneducated. I didn't feel lost. I didn't feel behind. I didn't feel, ahead. I just felt like very solid in the 1 to 2 things I need to do, which was time and heart rate, and that was it. And how like since then, the last 23 years, it has become so much more disorientating and confusing that we have all this information, but now do we almost have like too much? And how do you control it? So it's a very interesting topic, I think, as you look into this year, whether it's, prioritizing yourself or your training or just priorities. And then also look into like, we're probably the only ones, I think, that are on like the they're on the simplicity train. Everyone else is on like the advancement tech train. But I think unless you have a guide, it's much easier to get lost now than it is to be found.
Yeah. I mean, you said it before the podcast that this would be right up my alley, and it really is. I mean, last year I had my word of the year was learn. And this year actually I had written it down before. It's going to be simplicity. And man, I've been thinking about, doing, some more video stuff and, just talking about things and just, I don't know, whatever. Cause I'm really into YouTube and I find a lot of value on there from certain people who just sort of talk, kind of normal, like, average person, like what's going on and that sort of thing. So I've been thinking about that. And then, so I actually I didn't get off Instagram, but I just never reloaded the account and I put it on my new phone and it really literally makes me want to break my phone going on Instagram. I mean, it's just like, because of what you're saying about the disinformation and the disorientation kind of thing, it's just a constant barrage of stuff, man. You could have like, oh yeah, that's it, right? That's who I am. And then, 5 minutes later, you could be a completely different viewpoint.
Right.
Based on how things are worded and, like you said, disinformation or disorientation is more in the thing. I was, on this kind of topic of simplicity and like you're saying with all that stuff, as far as training go, I do follow, certain people that I really value kind of their opinion. And this one guy posted, newbies obsess about complexity and advanced techniques. Masters appreciate simplicity and train the basics till they can do them in their sleep. And that just really like hit home for me because it's so true, man. It's so easy to kind of get off course and, be trying the newest things. And, I talk to athletes all the time about like what you're saying with that training plan is sort of like, if you're not sure, just let me know, because I can see things a lot of times that maybe you don't know, that might help with your confidence as far as the progression or just where you're at in general. And I mean, the whole idea of, because it is overwhelming, man. I'm sure you do this. I'm sure a lot of people do it, but like I feel like, as somebody who really has always loved to create things and do new things. And, maybe I used to like the blog was a great example when I used to blog a lot, and I just had a kind of a singular focus, and it was something I really looked forward to. And I would go on there, back when we first met and just write every day basically, and just put something on the blog. And I knew what I was writing about. I was basically talking about training for Ironman Wisconsin. And now it's sort of like the doors are so wide open with this disorientation stuff that it's like you can do anything, and it just becomes gridlock in your brain sometimes. So it really is interesting, man. Like just to keep showing up and keep kind of getting the nuts and bolts done, and how that layers on top of each other, rather than always looking for something that it's just gonna, I don't know. It's you know me, man, since day one, I've been like kind of chrono at the heart, man. It's sort of like, I just feel like I was just a better trainer back in the day, even when I wasn't paying attention to so many things. It's just kind of you and the breath and the sweat, and it's not like, how's this going to look in the grid, the Training Peaks, metrics and all that kind of stuff. It's just so weird to me because some days you can feel great and other days you don't, but that doesn't mean like you're going backwards.
You said something there that in the very beginning, one of the other things he said was, if you made a list of like all the things that you want to get done today, people could write like a list of like 20, he said your highest priority, the thing that you want to get done the most today is the least likely to get accomplished. The one thing that you want to do so bad that you feel like you have to get done today, the highest priority, because it is such a high priority, it's probably got so many moving parts, is the least likely to get done. And I thought that was like so interesting because I think we always like we convolute our list, and to me, like when he said that, it was like when we look at like the perfect race plan, the perfect training calendar, the perfect periodization, the perfect schedule, the perfect execution that gets me X, Y, and Z times when it comes to our race, like that is the least likely thing to happen. But that is like we focus on like the peak, and then that's all we focus on. We don't focus on like the normal, like you said, like the small, things that aren't really flashy, but are just so incredibly important that we just ignore, and that's like the one thing that he said. He gave an example that I thought was hilarious. He's like, you eat organic and you avoid seed oils and you talk a lot about breath work and you talk about this. And then you go out one day and you're like, fuck it, I'm not wearing my seatbelt. See you later. It is like all like, how we like every decision we make has consequences, but how, what are you making a priority? What is actually meaningful? What do we want on our list? Who do we want to be, and that's the other thing is like, who do you want to be involved in that list? I was talking to an athlete the other day, not about like triathlon, but just about life. And, and they were saying, yeah, it's just like, everybody around me wants to have like 1 billion friends. And I just want to have like 3 to 5. Like, I don't have time to invest in things that don't matter to me or people that don't matter. It's like, and I think that people probably think that I'm lonely, but I'm really like super fulfilled because these people get me and they support me. And they're also very like-minded, because you can have 3,000 friends and be lonely. Or you could have 3 to 5 and feel busy and full and like you've got everything that you need. And I think that's a perfect example of like the distraction. Like I would argue that 99% of the people that have social media can probably open up Facebook and scroll twice and then ask themselves, who the fuck is that? Where along the lines did I become friends with Jim Roth from Montana, who's 73? Like, what do we have in common? And it's like, oh, happy birthday, man. And you're like, I don't even know, like, this isn't probably not even your real name. I don't even know how we met, but happy birthday, man. It's just like the weirdest world that we live in. You were talking about Instagram, and he mentioned this. He's like, I do these like 5-day, like, not retreats, but like I get off social media for 5 days. And he's like, it's amazing how much clearer all of my thoughts are and that they're all mine. And without getting distracted. And he talked about like limiting, like having only a certain amount of minutes a day that you can be on technology. And this isn't like, a technology, speech today, but when it comes to training, when it comes to planning for the year, like, I was reading through some of the 2025 race planning forums that people have and put out there. And it's like, so, and I asked all the athletes, well, not all, but I asked all of them, is like, what do you want me to say about you at the end of this next year? And I was the first one I've ever asked that. What do you want me to say about you? Some are like very detailed, and this, and this. And a lot of them are like that, one that just hit me hard. It was like, that I worked hard and I persevered.
Yeah.
And I was like, I mean, that should be everyone's answer. Not, not everyone's, but like that it's simple, but it's so complex because it requires so much work each and every day. Because not every day is going to be easy. A lot of days are going to be really, really hard. But if you're going to do those things, you're going to be that person, and the chances are you're probably going to succeed and reach all the goals that you set out at the top of the form. I want to say that they got as fast as they could possibly be, and they hit 90% of their compliance. And like those are all outputs, right? It's the material, it's the material, it's the digital. It's not the value, it's not the effort, and then that's what we should focus on the most. And I do think we're in this like really weird spot, even as a sport, where you've got like. I was thinking about this yesterday. I don't know where I went down this rabbit hole thinking, but I was probably distracted. But I got to thinking like back in like the very first triathlon, just how far the sport has come. And I remember I bought my very first bike, B12, Felt B12, red, tri-bike, 1200. And it was badass. I mean, it was cutting edge. I bought it at Go Tri Sports, Hilton Head Island. And the first race I ever did on it, I did on a beach. I did it on sand on Hilton Head Island at the beach from Triathlon. It was legit on sand. And I swear my tires were probably like 125 PSI. And they were so skinny. I mean, I was barely staying upright. It took me like 3 minutes to clip in. It was a total disaster. Then I was thinking about how I trained for that, how I like didn't even work on a spreadsheet. I just woke up and I was like, I think I'm going to run to work today, or I think I'm going to ride this today, or I think I'm going to go to the gym and spin. I didn't even have. I mean, there was a period when I was probably some of my fittest. I was training for this like Tri 101 series that lasted about a year. But I would get up and I'd be at the Y at like 4:30, and I would do like 4 straight hours of spin classes. And that was, I couldn't afford a bike yet. And then I'd hop on the treadmill and do that, or I'd go swimming. I was everything, but it was just time and effort. And that was probably something, I mean, not but pretty close to this. I mean, I didn't know any better. And I think there's a lot of freedom in not knowing, but right now it's impossible to kind of not know. So then you have to force yourself to not care. And I think that's even harder, right? To like stay in your lane, to have blinders on, to focus on your race. And I just think it's never been harder. And I think that's, like that's something that every generation says. I think it's like, oh, it's never been harder for this, or back in my day. But it's like, it is like, it's a, like the way I told you before we went live is like, he said, no one has a phone. No one uses it to call people. It's like $1 trillion business, military grade distraction device. That's all it is. And it's in everyone's pocket all the time. It's the last thing you see when you go to bed. It's the first thing you see when you wake up. Is anything that you even do your idea? Which is frankly super scary to think about, but it's 100% true. Like, because I think when he said that, I was listening to it on Spotify on the AirPods. And as he was doing that, I think I was scrolling through some emails, and I was like, what are you doing? And I was like, you're exactly right. You're like, I was like, stay focused. You don't need to be doing more than one thing at one time. And I think that's also like a really important piece when it comes to training for this year, is like, we want to do so much because we see so much, but it's very rarely the answer, right? Because you can have a goal for the year, you can have an idea for what you want to do for the year, and the next thing you see, you're like, oh, maybe I shouldn't do this year. My buddy signed up for it. You know what? I'm in. You're like, wait, 30 seconds ago, that was the worst idea you've ever heard in your entire life. And then 45 seconds later, you're already signed up and now you're all in. Like in athletes, for athletes specifically, do that all the time. Like a lot of the funny was like, whoopsie, I signed up for so-and-so. You're like, fucking right, it's whoops. Like that wasn't even your decision. Like what? It'd be funny, like if we could like backtrack every decision you made in like the 30 seconds before it, all those things that transgressed, and you could probably pinpoint of those 30 seconds, 27 seconds, those weren't even mine. They were somebody else's that drove me to do this or drove me to make that decision. And you see it with athletes that, you could argue that, Lionel Sanders, he is like the king of distraction. He can't say it still. He can't do the same thing for long enough to see it through. And most triathletes the same way. That's why everyone loves him, because they can, that resonates. You're like, I need to change up my training prescription and change coaches every 8 months. And I think it's super, again, and I'm not telling you got the answer, because I don't. I'm gonna tell you, like, I was trying to find like the perfect wording for like the amount of do not starts I've had the last like 3 years. And I was like, I couldn't figure out the S, but I was like, distracted, not something. I couldn't figure it out. Those doesn't make any sense, but that's more my problem, is getting distracted with either more work or terrible boundaries or doing something different. Is like, that's something that I have to get like back to. And it's another topic that he discussed was like how hard it is to, he's like, we feel like everything should feel really, really, really hard. And if it doesn't feel easy, then we're doing it wrong. If it doesn't feel easy, then we're doing it wrong. And I know that is me. That is 100% me. I have struggled forever with, to me, feeling, people are like, oh, well, get comfortable feeling uncomfortable. I'm like, comfortable is fucking uncomfortable for me. Like, I am much more uncomfortable, working hard, working long hours, doing whatever. Like, to me, that is my sweet spot. I am at home. But when it comes to being comfortable, what the fuck am I supposed to do with myself? Like, that is my kryptonite, is that I am very, very uncomfortable being comfortable or having things feel easy. It's hard to explain. But that is, I mean, I've said this before on the podcast, but like, that was one of the things that, well, my sponsor, when I first got sober, told me, he said, listen, he said, most alcoholics don't relapse when things are really, really great or really, really hard, because they're super focused on their program. They relapse on a Tuesday for no reason, because they're just going about their day with nothing going on, and they just lose track. And I was like, man, that is like so true. But for me, it's like, man, I got to, like, that's my goal, is just to find a way to be more comfortable not doing anything. And then the guy he was interviewing said, it's taken me a lot longer, and still a work in progress. It's taken me a lot longer to figure out how to not work hard than it ever took me on how to work hard, because it just came naturally. And like, I just have a huge problem slowing down and taking more time. And but it's same thing with training. Like, people think that, no pain, no gain, beat yesterday. If it doesn't hurt, you're not getting better, and it's just like, that's not how it works. Yeah, you should be in pain sometimes and it should hurt, but most times, yeah, that's not how it should feel. But our minds are so warped, and we've been so, programmed and trained to think that pain is the only way to feel or to get better, when that's just not the case.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing. I'll go on YouTube or something, and there'll be, it's just an onslaught of videos like talking about that. Right. And I think that's why I'm a little bit drawn to these, like these, I don't know, the 50-year-old guy channel or whatever. And it's like 5 things I stopped giving a shit about when I turned 50, and it's just like, it's just wild how a lot of these things are innate to my being, but you kind of just, I think everybody looks for a little bit of reinforcement. They want to kind of, because there is so much information out there, that it's so easy to get into this, like, I got to go grind again. I got to go grind. And then you look up 20 years later and all you've been doing is grinding. And I'm sure that, there's a lot of benefits, obviously, from that, but it's also like, when you listen to people talk that are older, they'll kind of be like, yeah, what's your number one regret? And I work too hard or whatever. And you kind of like, I think we got to give a little more credit sometimes to people who've been through it. And I think that, I've always kind of tried to think like that. I'd always try to put myself back in my younger days and be like, okay, this is kind of how I used to think about things, when my dad would always say, don't do that or whatever. And I never really respected it. I know that's part of life, and growing up is sort of understanding or listening to people who have actually been there, and knowing that, they may have a little bit of more input or value in what they're thinking about, sometimes. And, I was thinking about something. I was thinking about, training and triathlon, and I follow this guy too, who he was coaching a basketball team, and he was talking about how like I just think, because it's interesting to me always, is how to keep triathlon, something like how I always say, one of my biggest things is to actually train today so I look forward to tomorrow, whatever that may be. And this guy was talking about how he coached his basketball team, and very successful, and they all got better and everything like that. And he said, we only went on the court like 3 days a week. And the other times we were working on these other things. And, he's big on, increasing vertical and stuff like that, and just being a powerful, jumper and athlete in general. And then he was kind of saying, how important it is to be a little bit diversified in your approach to things. And he brought up Kobe and Michael Jordan and Seth Curry, and how they, growing up, I mean, these are like, arguably the top, 3 guys in history in some regards in basketball. And he said they all played different sports growing up. And he was just saying how valuable he thinks that is. And I just start to think about, like, we talk about simplicity and just doing things that kind of feel good, and just kind of keeping a rhythm versus always grinding in the, workout realm, and I think there's a lot of value in finding different things. And that's the kind of stuff I've been looking for with my incline walking. And, I've been kind of walking barefoot on the sand in the cold, just grounding, like doing simple things that kind of it's almost like a momentum build for me. And I've talked about that, but for me, it's important to kind of like, if I wake up and I'm not feeling something, to just sort of get something going, without hating it, because that's to me, that's another reason why I think I race. I've been doing 1 race a year, and I know that's not ideal necessarily for my finish time and how I perform and everything like that. But it's just sort of slowly got me back into this realm of really kind of enjoying what's going on along the way. So, I thought about process as being one of my words too. And just kind of really embracing doing something every day that feels good, and it doesn't always have to directly correlate to the outcome, but it'll still have an impact on the outcome. It's sort of like when people kind of get injured, I always say, well, don't focus on that. Figure out where it's connected to, and it's sort of like if you spend time, working on your weaknesses, 5-10 minutes a day or something like that, that kind of stuff goes a long way. And I think it kind of makes everything else more enjoyable too, because I've just, you've done it. We've all done it. You can, like, I could go out and probably run a hell of a long run right now, just based on my mental abilities, so you can do it. But man, everything else is so much more enjoyable when you're feeling good and you kind of have your body balanced out and you're, strong and all that kind of stuff. So I just think that there's a lot to be said for, whatever you want to call it, keeping fun involved or keeping variety involved along the way, and not always, just defaulting back to the grind.
And that's, I mean, and it's the like the minor, not the minor. It's the, the smaller, finer, more important details, not the grandiose major ones. Like you grind out those, like the unattractive, the ways to be successful. Like that's how you create your own success, and you create your own process, because it's going to be a lengthy process, not an abrupt stopped or halted or paused or new process every 30 days. Because the small, like getting lost in, the minutia of it, the things that aren't sexy, like the getting your sleep and, feeling right and treating yourself right and positive self-talk and consistency, and most of your stuff should be easy and a little stuff should be hard. Like that, it legit is that simple. That's it. Like that little bit right there. Most of the time you should go easy. Sometimes you should go hard, sleep as much as possible, eat right 85, 90% of the time. The rest, have a little fun, practice positive self-talk, do 85, 90% of your sessions. That gets 95% of the people to their maximum capability. That's it right there. We just unlocked the secret of training for all. No, everyone knows this. Everyone. But it's like we need more details that we can't understand, or technology that we can't afford, or to use a professional triathletes training program to make us feel like we're doing enough. Like we need to be lost. We need to be confused. We need to spend too much more money. We need to do what these pros are doing that have nothing, like zero things, that are comparable to our own life. We need to feel, really what we need to do is feel confused and lost as fuck to feel on track. That's what we needed. It was like I said, lost in accident, but like one of the things he said in his podcast is like, there's two types of people that are lost and people that know they're lost. But the fact is, if you know you're lost, you're one step closer to being on track. But that's like, it's like more people, like I guarantee if like you set up a shop at the expo and you polled 100 people about boom, 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 why do you do this, what made you this, I bet half of them wouldn't even, like, I don't know, no clue, saw it here, I don't know, I don't even know what this means, what's that, I have no idea. They just do it mindlessly. There's 100 different things. I got 19 different gadgets. My score says this. My HRV says this. My resting heart rate says this. My acute training load says this. My CTL says this. My TSS says this. My lactate was this. My resting, my LT1 was this. My threshold was this. My VO2 max was this. I was at 3 mils for my swim and my critical swim speed. You're like, all right, now you gave me all those things. Now tell me what to do with it. No idea. It's like they get confidence for whatever reason in disinformation. Because listen, information is disinformation if you can't discern it, apply it, and do something productive with it. It's useless. It's totally useless. But I think it makes a lot, and especially it makes them feel comfortable, right? That they're keeping up with the Joneses. Well, you mean as long as you're not on track and you're lost, you're going to keep up with the Joneses. Because they're just driving around in circles in the cul-de-sac anyway. But that's where we are, right? And yes, is there a lot of good that has come from information and technology? 100%, right? A lot of it. But man, like sometimes I think it's hard to argue. Like, are we better off or are we worse off?
Come on, go there.
A lot of days I would say we're worse off. Like it's interesting, right? Because we've got.
I think technology's a net loss, but go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, it's. I don't know that I disagree with you, because when you look at the net, like the return on our investment of time, on a day-to-day basis, because this is something he also said. He was like, no one ever, is on their deathbed and says, "Man, I really wish I would have spent more time on Instagram." Like no one's ever said that. He said, so if you look at the cost benefit of the amount of time you probably spend being distracted because of technology compared to the amount of time you save doing your normal day-to-day activities, and what technology is saving you in efficiency or whatever it is. I'm sure for some people the technology would be, a huge bonus. For a lot of people, it's relative, right? Like, what's happened in the last 2 years, what's happened in the last 20 years, right? A lot of technology. But I don't know that a lot of people would come out in the green. I think a lot of people would come out in the red, which begs the question, right? Like, what are we doing with the time that we have? Who are we spending time with the time that we're allowed, right? That we can do these things. Are we getting lost, but that feels like we're on track because that's all we know, or is that like, it's the same thing with me. Like, is my is my uncomfortability is at my place of comfort? And if that is, and that's something I need to correct. So it's like, what's the direction? What's the, he said, I'm sure I'll butcher this, but, and I promise you, the listen to the whole podcast is way better. I'm trying to like summarize it in Cliff Note. He said, missiles don't hit their target. Missiles don't hit not the target.
Okay.
They're fired and they don't hit this and they don't hit that and they don't hit this and they don't hit that, and therefore they hit their target. He said, he's talking about like saying no. Like if you don't know what to say, like even if you don't know what you want in life, that's a hard question, right? It's a really hard question. He said, how do you make 1,000 people, 1,000 miserable people, how do you make 1,000 miserable people happy? And he was like, I got no idea. He's like, how do you make 1,000 happy people miserable? He's like, I got a fucking million ideas. And he was like, he said, so sometimes having the, like not knowing what you don't want is just as good as knowing what you want. Because if you know what you don't want, then you should also, then you want the inverse of that. And so I think sometimes we spend so hard thinking about what do we want? What do we have to have? What do we want to achieve this year in racing? And that's really hard because it's so subjective, right? It's like, most people, I want a time, I want a PR. Like that, there, you can't control that. What do you not want? I don't want to get hurt. I don't want to have I don't want to hate triathlon. I don't want to do this. Like, okay, well then now we know what you want. You want to be consistent. You want to stay healthy. Like we can work with those. And I think it's interesting, for people that are making resolutions or goals. It's like, maybe you don't have to figure out what you want. Maybe you can just ask yourself, what do I not want? Right? I don't want to work more this year. Okay, well then the answer is, what you need to do to trim down your work or to be more, have better boundaries or to do whatever it is. Like, I don't want to, I don't want to fail at this race. Okay, well, you want to succeed. What does it look like? So I think it's an interesting way to like try to figure out what it is you want by telling yourself what you don't want. And I think like when you look at the year and you look at the things you want to accomplish, I think it's there's a million ways to go about it. But I think it begs the question of like, how are we getting to where we want to go? And are we getting there in our own way? And if we did come up with a reason or a goal for this year, is it ours? And if it is ours, how do we come up with it? And if it's not ours, how did I get there?
Yeah. And how do you get that clarity? I think a lot of that is because there's so much going on and we have so many options and we see so many things in social media. And that's one of those things where that's why I think I'm just so into the meditation kind of thing, is that it just sort of, I guess, calms down the nerve endings and helps you think clearer through the distractions. And I know that's a good long-term thing, but I also know that when you're doing that, you better be ready for some shit to come up, because it can get intense once you get into it. And, but I think that, but that's one of those things, man, where I just know that it is good for me. It calms me down. It helps me see things clearer. And, like you're talking about, it just takes away, what you can kind of almost even see what you don't want, a lot clearer. And it's just, you can kind of let it go. But, I have a hard time sometimes getting in that rhythm. So sometimes I just make that sort of, I hate to say, because priority one, even though sometimes that's not what happens, but it's sort of like, just get that done, and then let whatever else happens, sort of small goals and everything like that. And, I've been, the other day I Googled bed of nails and that was interesting because now I get ads for these. But I actually bought this little mat that's got these plastic pointy things on it, and I lay back on that. And that's what has got me back into meditation, because you have to kind of really relax or else those things stick in you. It's sort of like a acupressure kind of device. But I found it, I just find it interesting because it has helped me sort of look forward to meditation in kind of a weird way. It's sort of like the cold plunge of meditation. You gotta lay back on these bed of nails and do it. But I don't know, man. I love what you said there, man. Find out what you don't want, or at least see it, because it's so hard, man, to kind of crystallize our goals and really what's important. It's so easy to kind of go off path on that sort of thing. And I actually had an athlete send me this morning after an email I sent out. She sent back her whiteboard where she put shit up there and kind of has it in front of her face all the time. And just a sort of reminder. And I think it's easy. It's not easy, but it's a good thing to kind of know. If you really know what your goals are and you have some stuff in mind and what you really want to do, that's the stuff that you've been saying for years and years and years. And this is the year to do it, I guess. But it does help having it in front of you. And I think back to when I started using your computer with those Post-it notes that were still on it. I forgot exactly what it was, but you know what I mean? It's just right there. And but I think the tendency would be to have like, a list of like 100 things or whatever, but just maybe like get in, for me, maybe meditation's one thing and whatever, but like things that are going to kind of complement everything else and help you get towards, in the right momentum and the right groove to do the other things you really want to do. But just make sure, I think it's so much to be said for really having a clear peace of mind with that stuff.
Yeah, I love that. Like, and we can close out here in a minute, but I did that, not the exact thing, but something similar. It was 2 days. Was it yesterday? Dear God, maybe 2 days ago. We're in no man's land. I don't know what day it is right now. But I was like, I listened. It was before I started listening to this podcast and finished afterwards. But I was thinking about like, a lot of us love a lot of things, and then we have like these obstacles / opportunities, that come up in everyone's life. And so what I did, I was like trying to figure out a way to, and I listed out, my goal is to find the things that I love the most. I made a list of what do I love to do the most professionally. What do I love to do the most? And then and of those, what also takes me the least amount of time? Nothing to do with money, nothing to do with trajectory, nothing to do with, anything that has anything financial. What do you love the most? What takes you least amount of time? I made out my list and I had like 10. And then I was like, all right. And then I put them, what takes least amount of time? What fills your cup the most? And I was like, all right, boom. These are 1, 2, 3. These are my number one. This is it. And after that, nothing else matters. Nothing else matters. It's irrelevant. So don't waste time on the ones below it. Only spend time on this. Don't get distracted on the likes or the maybes or the ones just because. Stay focused on the loves. And then the other one was like, listing out, opportunities or obstacles, like which ones make the most sense and which ones also match your loves. Take least amount of time and fall in line with what you love. It's like, man, and everything else is a no. That's it. And those are so past. Like, I have a hard time saying that. I think everyone does to an extent. It's like, he said, if it's not an immediate yes, it is a 100% a no. And just again, that's kind of like not knowing what you want, but knowing what you don't want. He said, so if it's not a yes, it's 100% no. And so just say that and do that. You can't. And so many people get lost and waste their times in the maybes and the mights and the what ifs. If it doesn't fit X, Y, and Z, it's an absolute no. And if it's absolute no, then it's a total yes.
Yeah, that's good.
This was a yes and not a no. As always, no top fives, no fastest ways, no best ways, just a little bit of chit chat. Hopefully some poking and prodding in your own agenda for next year, or your path, or your goals, or your resolutions, whatever you want to call it. Hope today's combo was thought-provoking. It always is for me, and that's why I love doing them. As always, go to our website, c26triathlon.com. It is our one-stop shop for all things coaching, camps, and community. If you don't want to be confused next year, if you don't want to be disoriented, if you want someone to make sure you're on track, accountable, and stay in the course, check out the coach tab. Find the coach that's right for you, or click on the tab and we'll find one for you. And as always, Mike, he's available. Mike at c26triathlon.com. If you need anything from me specifically, Robbie at c26triathlon.com.
Yeah, man. Happy New Year. And
check in next year, man.
Come off of what you just said there towards the end is a quote from Bukowski: "Find what you love and let it kill you."
I love that. I'm gonna go snort some Reese's then.
Yeah.
All right, guys. We'll see you next year.
All right, man. See you later.